All right, welcome to the Autodesk 3ds Max 2018 YouTube classroom. I'm Mr. Donnan, and today we are actually going to get into the mini curve editor. So, up until now we have this sort of bouncing cube and it's rotating and all sorts of fun stuff, and you've been experimenting with it and playing around with it, and hopefully you got a lot out of it. But for now, we're kind of at a point where to really get better work done, we need to have more control, and this timeline is not doing it for us. Now luckily there's a little button here called the mini curve editor window to open the mini curve editor window. So I'm going to turn on off auto key, all right, and I'm going to open this up, and what this is going to do is it's going to give us a whole new set of tools. I'm going to drag this up using the context sensitive cursor, and then I'm going to zoom out a little bit so we can see this but without it being a mess. And then now what we've got is a whole list of stuff over here. Now the list of stuff is set up in a hierarchical list that shows everything in the world. You've got sound, you've got all sorts of crazy things, but for now we're going to go down to objects, because the objects are the different things that are in the scene. Currently we only have one object in our scene, which is our starting cube, and it's right here. Now it has transform, rotation, and scale properties. When you animate, you are actually adjusting these properties. When you move things, you're moving and positioning it in a different place. That's the transforms. All the transforms are position, rotation, and scale. So what we've done is we've created this process, but you can't actually see what's going on. Like, there's all these numbers and it's really confusing and we don't know what anything is, and I don't see anything at all. I do see, you may or may not see this line, and when you drag this line back and forth, things move really fast. That's because all of our animation currently takes place between 0 and 30, and each one of these numbers down here is a frame. So what we first need to do is go ahead and grab your cube just by selecting the starting cube. Notice, if you don't have the cube selected, or if you don't have any animation on your cube, you should go ahead and watch the last video and add some animation to it, and then come back so that we can have some animation to manipulate. So we're going to start with objects. By clicking objects, you should be able to select your cube and see what is in the scene. So select your cube so it pulls up all the different keyframes you've added to that cube. So first things first, I'm going to click on transform, and then I'm going to click on frame value extent selected keys. Okay? Then I'm going to click frame horizontal extents for selected keys. Now that should bring us down to 0 to 30. We could have done this other ways, but this is okay for now. Now each one of these transforms, you'll notice that you actually don't see anything yet. You can zoom out using the you can scroll around by pressing in on the middle mouse button, and you can grab and move and shift some stuff. Let's go ahead and position. Let's Z position. If you look at Z position, you know Z is up and down in the world, right? This is our Z position. As the line spline goes up, you can see our object is up, and as it goes down, you can see it goes down. So this is our position in the world. Now, this looks kind of wonky, right? It kind of comes up and it's got a lump here and it kind of comes down. But you'll notice if you click on some of this stuff, you'll see things that we've been familiar with, like these spline editors, right? These Bezier curves. We're going to use this because we can do some crazy stuff with it, right? If I adjust this like this, and you can click on the yellow bar line, and then watch. When it hits here, it's gone. Why? Because I've manipulated where it is positionally, right? Way too low, and then it squishes and whatever. So this curve setup, I'm going to undo those until it gets back to where it was. So what it is all these extra frames that we created, just like when we created lines for the lofting project, when we did the vase. These lines can make your lines and your creation so much smoother. and it makes it so much easier to manipulate and get nice smooth curves. And animation is all about smooth curves. Everything in the world moves smoothly. Nothing starts quickly. Everything has a easing in and easing out. And that's part of our problem, actually, because if we were to have this whole process of moving in and out quickly, you'll notice that there's no good way to have something constantly move evenly through a process, right? Evenly through an animation. So let's go ahead and hit play down here. We'll watch the process. Now we can go through and look at different things. You have to pause it to get to the next thing. So our Y position is front to back. We don't move front to back. There are still keyframes here, but we don't really need them. As a matter of fact, we could delete them if we wanted to. We don't really need to. X position is left right. That's not changing either because it's just bouncing up and down. Our rotation just does change, actually. Our rotation doesn't change on X, it only changes on Y. So you'll notice that the rotation goes all the way down here and then comes back, right? Crazy. That's a big, crazy curve. You can actually frame this by pressing these two buttons, and you can see the entire framing of it, of the scene. We'll talk about how we actually get this to work a little better in a second. And scale, the scale, let's go ahead and adjust that. This is our scale. Let me scroll up. So our scale, you've got your X and Y, or Z and Y scale. All right, so that's your squash and your stretch. Okay, and you'll notice they curve and then they stay the same and then they transition and then come back to the same initial spot. Okay, because they're fully squashed and then you can drag and scrub through. So let's go ahead and see how we can make this smoother. The first things first, we should adjust the position. Our position is mostly along Z, right? And if you can't see it because it's been, adjusted, these two buttons are your friend. Click both and you should be able to see the entire curve. Now when things bounce, they usually bounce up in a bell curve smoothly and then they come back down in a bell curve smoothly. These extra frames we can actually just delete. So now, if you look at this, this is a much more smooth curve. All right, let's watch it. Well, that's kind of weird. It still goes up the same height. Actually, let's get rid of the rotation. So rotation is being moderately difficult to read. So let's go ahead and get our rotation, which was Y. I'm going to delete these individual frames. So this frame all the way down here, I gotta zoom out and get them. This frame can be deleted, and when I delete that frame and I delete this frame, now it's not going to rotate at all anymore. No more rotation, none, zip. So no more rotation. Scale. I'm also going to get rid of the scale. All right, if we set one of these to 0, right now it's at 120, I'm going to set it to 0. If I take all of these, let's see, this should be set to 0 too. You can actually type in what you want up here, 0. Same with this. So if we scale out, 0 is gone, right? We set it to 0, which means now it is 0% scale. That's no good. What do we need it? It needs to be 100. You can see if I type in 100, I get where we want. Now that's not the full, that was our squash. So if I hit 100, my number lock's being weird. There. Now it's at 100% scale. I can take these and delete them. I can take these and delete them. Grab this, make sure it's set to 100. Good. 100. There. I don't know why it's finicky like that, but it is. Anyway, so now I can delete all these middle sections and they're gone. So now I'm not going to have that scale problem anymore. It's not going to scale. It's just going to move nice and oh, I wonder if it's playing. Weird. Anyway, I hit play so I could get my number back. So there we go. It moves up and down. Now, like we said, that's position, Z position in particular. So press play, moves up and down, up and down. This is what we originally started with. I'm going to zoom this in so we have a better view of the whole thing. So click these two to get a better view. Now, the thing is, this doesn't look like the way a ball bounces. If you think about drawing a ball, like if you draw a ball and the way it bounces, it sort of is up and then it hits quickly and then comes up sharp. So the bottom is sharp. If you look at this, it's smooth. It's smoothly up, it's smoothly bottom. Now the top part would be smooth because gravity slowly starts to take hold and slowly starts to pull down. But when it hits the ground, it needs to be fast. So what we actually have to do is change the way these keyframes work. Just like before when we had a Bezier curve, if we had a smooth tangent, well, not tangent, a vertex on our curves before when we worked with the lofting. Same process. We're going to actually grab this and we can adjust it like this, or I'm going to right click, or we can actually right click the object and we can see that in and out. In and out is what type of curve you're going to have coming out of this. So you can click on this and see that there's different options. If we do this one, this means fast out, okay, which means it's going to come straight up. We want to do that on both sides. We want, in this case, it's fast in because it's coming in. So that is a lot more like what a ball looks like when it bounces. Imagine the ball coming here, bouncing, and then bouncing, okay? Let's watch that and see if it looks better. Boing, boing, boing. Yep, great, perfect, or at least closer. We can still use our squash and stretch, right? Because we still want it to sort of squash a little bit at the bottom and then return to its original shape while it's in the air. So we do that with our scale. Okay, once again, I can close this. Select scale, make sure all of it's set. It's going to be set to 0, and that's fine. But what we want to do is go ahead and go to the bottom, and we know that we're going to have it squash. So we can squash it here. Oops. Make sure you have squash and scale, or squash and stretch, so that when you squeeze it, it pushes out, right? Good. Good, we're up to 110. Now, when we get back to here, it's already set. Notice this keyframe is already set. That's great. This keyframe is not a keyframe, it was a handle. Let's go to frame 15. Actually, how long do we want it to be squashed? I would say within 2 frames, it's going to be back to, well, let's go 3 frames. It should be back to its original spot. Okay, we can add a keyframe where we want by using this little plus button. So I'm going to set this and click on this line, and I create a keyframe on both of these. All right, this is at frame 3, but I want it to be 100%. Man, this is so weird. I have to hit it fast. Weird. Okay, cool. So therefore it's going to squash. So it's going to squash and then bounce up, and then at frame, so that's frame 3. So this needs to be at 27. I think that's right. We can set this to, actually make sure we don't have anything selected. I got a weird setup here. There. Because I still had select. Let's go ahead and move keys. Okay, cool. So now I want to do the same thing at 27. So I should be able to move this. The current keyframe is 26. I'll bump it to 27. That's 3 frames from the end. And I'm going to create another keyframe using the keyframe addition plus. There. And I'm going to set it back to 100. So I'm going to type in 100. So weird. Okay, cool. So that's done. All right, so now it's going to squash, bounce, and squash. Now the catch here is that you really want it to squash when it hits the ground, okay? But not until. So that means we actually need to move it so that it's going to hit the ground and squash, because we don't want it to really squash before it hits the ground. That's not very realistic. We want it to be squashing as it hits the ground. So for 3 frames during the Z position for the object, and we need to reframe everything so we can see it. thought I hit Z. I had Y. We actually want it to be a little bit lower when it hits. Okay, so that means for this 1, 2, 3 frames, I want to take this and actually make it the exact same frame. So I can add this again, make sure it's on 3, and then I can drag it down, right? I can even set it to 0. Now I need this to be smooth, perfectly smooth coming in. I need to bounce and then be smooth coming out. So now it looks like it's squashing and hitting the same spot. So it's squash there, okay? But to make sure this works the way we want it to, I'm gonna go back to move keys. I'm gonna select it and I'm gonna right click on it. Oops, make sure you got the right one. Click on it, drag it. I want this to be smooth coming in. Actually, let's make it there. Perfect. So what I did is I made it set up, I set it up so it's a hard stepped. So that means it's basically going to be straight from there to there. And I'm going to do the same thing for the last piece, right here-ish. Create another keyframe. I can move it if I need to. And then go back to my move tool, right click on it, and on the way out, I want it to be, whoops, I want it to be stepped again. Cool. And now I'm going to make sure that this keyframe, and you can see the keyframe current value is at 57, and I want it to be 0. There. And I want in to be fast, because we already talked about that, because it needs to bounce. All right? Same thing here. This is time frame 3. Out is going to be fast. I keep grabbing the wrong thing. Fast. There. So there we go. Bounce. Now, it doesn't look quite right, but if you watch it, now when it bounces, where's my play? Boing. Boing. Now, my only problem with it currently is I feel like it's too squishy. It takes too long. So we can adjust that by taking that and just moving it over. Maybe just to 2 frames. And make sure that you have your offset to 0. Weird. Right click. Let's try that. There. Fine. Now, you can actually jump to the next frame if you want. Be careful because sometimes that manipulates the way it's built. This problem is moderately new. This should be smooth. There. Smooth in, smooth out. And this should be smooth, slow out. And this we're going to move to frame 28. So we can type in 28 and it should just bump it right over. Good. Now let's see if that looks better. Boing, boing, boing. Cool. There we go. Now if we want to adjust other things about it, we could, but that's the basic idea. Now keyframes can be extremely powerful because what we've just done, and we can close this, is we've done the same thing with a lot less work and a lot less frames than we were doing before. Before we were trying to like figure out exactly how far things were moving and stuff like that. Now with animation, you can also exaggerate stuff. So like old animation in particular used to have a lot of squash and stretch. Today with Pixar, they still do a lot of squash and stretch, but they do it the way we're doing it with keyframes. So go ahead, take some time, and see if you can get your cube to bounce just like we did. All right? If you want to add rotation, that's fine, but you're going to have to make sure that your rotation position, your core rotation position, which is your pivot point, is going to be set in the center of gravity. Because if it's not in the center of gravity, it's going to look weird. For some things, the center of gravity will change. Like if you're a person and your arms are flailed out versus if your arms are nice and tucked in, your center of gravity is still the same spot, but the way that your body moves will be different. However, a cube will stay the same pretty consistently. So, where are we at with our scale? Let's frame that up. Cool. You could even say that, like, at frame 15, we could create a keyframe. So let's go ahead and create a keyframe there that's set. And now we can have just a tiny stretch. So this is 6, which is 1, 2. I should probably move that to. Let me grab my move key. Click on that. Right click on it. I'll move this to 5. Cool. Should be fine. Good. Same thing here. I'm going to grab my plus and I'm going to add another keyframe there. And that's a 25. Good. I don't have to move that one. Now, that's where my, let's see, let's go to 6. I'm going to add another key at 6 and another key at 24. And now I can take this process here and I'm going to hit my R key. I'm going to stretch it just, woo, right here. Now value is going to be, you can move this over so you can see it a little better. I'm not worried about X, 100, but my Y, let's make it 105. Sure. And my Z should be 105. I mean negative. No, not negative, just 95. There. Nope, I need to swap those because that's still squashing. I want it to stretch. So it's 95 and this is 105. There we go. So it's going to cross. Good, good, good. Cool, cool. Move that. Good. Close that. And make sure we go here. Right click. Oh. I have too many things selected. That's all I want. I just want that one. Is it frame 5? Same thing as I said before. Y needs to be 95. Yes. And Z needs to be 105. And smooth is probably fine for now. We might end up changing it to smooth in, slow out. Let's do that. Slow in and slow out. I think that's going to give us smooth anyway. Okay, cool. Cool. We may need to move this over. This frame could be set over a bit. 6, maybe move that to 7. Yeah. 24 goes to 23. That looks a little more natural. Let's see how that looks. Let's play it. Boing. It doesn't look great. It's too slow. To get that to work effectively, we probably need to move it over. We can take it and move it to there. Grab this. Move it. Nope. Move it to there. There we go. So basically we're just tightening this up. Those are going to move 4, and this is going to move to 5. There. Let's see how that looks. And play it. Boing. Boing. I feel like it needs to move up more, which we could do for Z position. There we go. All you gotta do is grab this, right click on it, value, make it like, I don't know, 180. Let's see how that looks. Maybe make it higher. 200. So this is just adjusting how much it's bouncing. Cool. That's the basic idea. If you can get your cube to bounce nearly that well, then we're in good shape. So that's the process for today. Go ahead for this week, the rest of the week, your job is to adjust and play with this cube. You can also have it rotate, but make sure if you actually rotate it, you're gonna have to change your pivot point so it's in the center, which means all of your numbers are going to change slightly if you change your pivot point. But you can adjust your pivot point through here, affect pivot, center it to the object, and then you can start doing rotations. If you don't, the rotations are just going to look a little weird because it's going to rotate around. It's not going to rotate around its center of gravity, which means it's going to be weird. Okay? All right, so that's it. That's your intro into keyframe animations. Now this is only one object and this has no bones in it. It's just a simple object. It's as simple as animation as you can get. The keyframe editor is extremely powerful and it will help you a ton as we move forward. Being comfortable with this will allow you to create all sorts of amazing stuff like walk cycles or machines or whatever you want. You know, just a plethora of things. Go ahead and experiment with what each one of these options looks like for this process. For the in and out, for instance, if I have the in set to step, what does that look like? It jumps, like immediately jumps up in the air, right? And then it jumps down. Okay? If you have the input for this set to these other options, what can you do with them? A lot of them give you tools that you can manipulate. Like especially here, you've got your locked Bezier handle, right? Just like we had before. Right click, undo that. And I believe this is your unlocked. Oh, it's your in and out, so you can adjust that. So now we've got this whole process. I think you right click and adjust that. Let's close that. No, that's it. Oh, there it is. There you go. You can simplify curves. You can do all sorts of stuff. So for now, I just want you to sort of play around with getting the bounce set, and that's your goal this week. Your goal this week is to turn in a bounce animation. Okay? Now, to do that, you're going to have to learn how to export video. And we're going to talk about that in the next video, and that's going to be the last thing you do this week. You're going to export your bounce video so you can show it off on your Facebooks and your Instagrams and your Snapchats. So that's that. All right, I'll see you next time. We'll talk about exporting video.